What is up, guys? So, funny story. Bad game was starting to irritate me because um, I was trying to fix the tile collision and stuff, or at least make a better version of it, but I seem to be unable to do that, and the way it is currently is just kind of icky. So I decided to take a quick break and start on something else as the ADHD person I am. So this took me about, I don't know, like 30 minutes to make, because most of the heavy lifting is already done for me by the basically the engine I'm pseudo developing. I just copy a bunch of these files over, and that's a lot of the heavy lifting out of the way for a simple time step game. This game in particular, uses vectors a lot more, and you can see it here. These vectors are for velocity, and in fact I actually have this. These vectors are for casting from the origin and for the velocity. Oops. And they're just drawn. They're drawn here, and yeah, and this is the debug output, which I'll show you after I demonstrate this game really quick. So, it's asteroids, or rather, it's Roids, which I renamed just in case there's any licensing issues, which I doubt. So this is just a purely vector game right now. This is the origin, and these are casted vectors, which tell me exactly, or rather, I guess you could almost consider them offset vectors or something, because these determine where the points are supposed to be in relation to the vertex. So you can spin and turn, which is done by some vector math, specific to 2D vectors. It's a simple formula. If you've taken any sort of like trigonometry, etc., this is probably, at least you'll understand what it means, at least partially. So this is how you rotate a two-dimensional vector. For three-dimensional vectors, it gets a lot more complicated, and luckily I'm not building a 3D game, but needless to say, I would imagine that you need at least pre-calculus to understand it, because it makes a heavy use of matrices. So this is just my 2D vector library that I've been building. Anyway, back to the demo. So if I press W, the ship goes in the direction that the nose is facing. If I press S, it goes backwards. And if I press Q, it brakes. And I can actually demo the debug output like so. Oops. These are old. Those are part of the other game. And again, it runs at a glorious 60 frames a second. So this is the debug output. This is vector 1, vector 2, and vector 3. Vector 1 is this pink vector here. It casts out from the origin to the nose. And these two vectors here are the side vectors. You can't really see it because this video is kind of small, but this red line is probably vector 2. Or rather, no, this red line is actually vector 3. And this kind of goldish line is vector 2. And this green line is just a line built from the point determined by that vector, and so on and so forth until it builds a nice triangle. So you'll see that my origin is currently in the exact center of the screen. My vectors are also at their defaults, and if I start tapping just so I start turning, you'll see the vectors are now transforming, and the origin is not doing anything at all because it's not a vector, it's just the origin to determine where these should be offset. And then if I press W, you'll notice that it's now going the speed that it should be. So I actually did kind of a fancy trick to do that, which I'll explain here. So the velocity vector is determined like so. Whenever you press W, it simply sets it to the noses vector and divides it by 20 so that we're not going insanely fast. Since the default stuff is actually around 20, say the default J and the default I are 20 and 15 respectively. If you've taken, or if you understand what vectors are, you'll know that I is a unit vector and J is also a unit vector. Combined, they make a normal vector. Either way, really, in the end, vectors are quite possibly one of the coolest things on the planet. And then you just set the velocity to 0 when you press Q, which I don't think is in the original asteroids, but I'm going to put it in for now because it helps with debugging. I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to show you guys. Other than, here's something. I don't actually remember why, but I can pass through walls easily, like this. Actually, I remember why, because the origin is transforming in the direction, and then the origin wraps around, like that. And I could keep doing that for basically an eternity. However, if I go here, it will crash because it's trying to write to an invalid y value. If you look here, the y is 638 and the x is 2723. That's impossible, and it does not fit within the constraints of our memory. So, I don't actually remember if it was in the original Roids to be able to wrap around, but in my version, I'm just going to treat the walls as a solid obstacle that you will die if you try to pass through. So that's really all I've got to show you. I know a lot of you guys aren't really all that interested in this stuff, so it's more for my posterity than anything. But if you are interested, that's pretty awesome. Have a wonderful day, and I'll probably post the source code again on GitHub, like I did with Bad Game. So, have a fantastic day.